Dumb Husky and his white cat Shizun. Chapter 90. This venerable one's Shizun is a Grand Master. In the main hall, this person was wearing a snow-white robe. He stood with his hands behind his back, his long sleeves reaching the ground. His expression seemed dignified and serious, but his eyes were slightly raised and his eyelashes drooped slightly. There was disdain and arrogance in his politeness. Li Wuxin did not expect Elder Yu Heng to be him. In an instant, his expression changed. Chu. Chu Wanning calmly said, "Manner lordly, I trust you've been well since we last met. Why is it you?" Li Wuxin, who had a sharp tongue just now, became speechless for a long time. His face was as pale as wax. "After you left the Rufeng sect, there was no news of you. We thought you were going to travel the world. Who knew that you would actually cast pearls before swine?" Chu Wanning sneered. His eyes were cold. "Thank you for thinking so highly of me. All right, enough idle talk. Let's get down to business. I heard that you think I killed 500 families of Kaidi town to practice demonic cultivation. This was not my doing, but since Manor Lordly came all the way here, you must have misunderstood. I still have important matters to attend to, so I won't be accompanying you to the Tianyan Pavilion. If you have any questions, you can ask me here." After he finished speaking, he was too lazy to stand. With a wave of his sleeve, he sat down at the elders' table. Loyalty Hall had seats especially prepared for every elder. Chu Wanning's seat was to the left of Shui Zhenyang. It was covered with a thin bamboo mat, and half of the bamboo curtain was hanging down. Compared to Elder Lucan's fancy seat, which was full of fresh flowers, it was too plain. All these years, although Chu Wanning had not deliberately concealed his identity, he had always kept a low profile. Thus, although the younger generation of the Baitan Manor had heard of him, they did not know how powerful he was. However, Li Wuxin was different. He had been in Jianghu for many years. How could he not know of Yu Heng of the Night Sky's illustrious reputation? He clenched his fists in his sleeves and glanced at young Master Chang from the corner of his eyes. If he had not accepted the Chang family's money, he would not have taken on this difficult task. He originally thought that Elder Yu Heng of Shizun Peak was just a nameless cultivator. Who would have thought that he was actually Chu Wanning, who had not shown himself for a long time? If he had known that it was him, he wouldn't have gotten involved in this mess no matter how many benefits he was offered. But now, he couldn't advance or retreat. What should he do? Li Wuxin's outward expression did not change, but he was complaining incessantly in his heart. It just so happened that one of his direct disciples didn't understand the situation and thought that this Elder Yu Heng was being unreasonable, so his master didn't know how to deal with it for a while. Thinking himself clever, he stepped forward and said, "Elder Chu, have you ever been to Kaidi town to subdue demons?" Chu Wanning looked up and glanced at him. "Yes." "Then, was that ghost bride also the evil that you suppressed?" "You mean Luo Xianxian?" That youth was at a loss for words. He only knew that the evil spirit who went berserk in Kaidi town was a ghost bride, but he didn't know anything else. Therefore, when Chu Wanning asked him a question, he couldn't answer. He could only blush and say, "Anyway, it's a female ghost." "Why are you asking so many questions?" She was very young, about 15 or 16 years old. "How many brides in a town have died unjustly?" Chu Wanning sneered. "Kaidi town has a custom of performing ghost weddings. There are at least 50 ghost brides, if not 100. I really don't know which one you're talking about." "You? What do you mean by you and me? Unruly disciple, step back." After scolding the disciple who stepped forward, Li Wuxin put on a pleasant face and said to Chu Wanning, "Grand Master Chu, this is my disciple's first time out of the mountain, so he doesn't know the rules. Please don't take offense. The ghost bride he was talking about is indeed Luo Xianxian." Chu Wanning slightly frowned. Luo Xiangxian's wronged spirit went berserk. Yes. Li Wuxin sighed. That female ghost lost her mind. Not only did she kill the entire Chen family, but she also started a massacre in the town. When I led my disciples to suppress her, there were almost no living people in Kaidi town. Chu Wanning muttered, how could this be? I heard that the one who was involved in this matter was Elder Yu Heng of the Shizun Peak. It seemed something went wrong, so I came here. In addition, I also obtained 2 things in Kaidi town. Grand Master Chu, I hope you can take a closer look and see if they are related to you. As he spoke, he first took out a piece of blood-stained yellow silk from his sleeve and was about to hand it to Chu Wanning. Unexpectedly, Xuemeng stepped in front of him and said unhappily, give it to me. This. My Shizun is particular in cleanliness. He doesn't like to touch things that have been touched by outsiders. Xuemeng was exaggerating. In fact, Chu Wanning was just unwilling to touch things that had been touched by people he hated. He really wasn't a clean freak. However, Chu Wanning didn't like Li Wuxin, so he just let Xuemeng be. He didn't say much and just lowered his eyes to drink the hot tea that Shi Mei offered. Li Wuxin suppressed his anger, but there was nothing he could do. He could only sneer and hand the yellow silk to Xuemeng. Under the candlelight, everyone was watching. Chu Wanning unfolded the silk and glanced at it. His expression changed. Crossing spell. That's right. Grand Master Chu, according to my investigation, Luo Xiangxian's vengeful spirit was temporarily sealed by you. Before you left, you gave a copy of the crossing spell to the only daughter of the Chen family and asked her family to copy it every day for 10 years, right? That's right. Then this crossing spell is Grand Master Chu's handwriting, right? That's right. But Grand Master Chu, your copy of the crossing spell has an extra rune at the end of every incantation. What does that mean? Don't tell me you don't know. Li Wuxin's voice suddenly became louder. The Myriad Waves rune is a counter spell. Every time the Chen family finished copying a copy of the crossing spell, they would draw a counter spell, which forcibly turned the crossing spell into a curse that harms people. It will break the seal and make Luo Xiangxian's vengeful spirit go berserk. No one in the Chen family knows this. Except for Elder Yu Heng, who personally gave the silk to them. I can't think of a second person who can teach them to draw such a powerful spell. Old man, don't slander others. Xuemeng was furious. If my Shizun wanted to kill them, he wouldn't have to go about it in a roundabout way. What positive and counter spells? Can't the handwriting be imitated? You suspect that my Shizun drew it, but I suspect that you secretly drew it on the way and used it to frame others. Li Wuxin put on a fake smile and said, Young Master Xuemeng, why are you interrupting when the elders are talking? Xue Zhenyang interjected, Manner Master Li, you're being biased by saying that this is Yu Heng's doing based on a piece of silk. My son is right. Handwriting can be imitated. If someone wants to frame Yu Heng, they can just copy his rune a few times and it will be very similar. Then we have to ask where Grand Master Chu has such an old enemy who would spend so much effort to frame him. Mo Ran, who had been silent for a long time, suddenly laughed. Li Wuxin looked at him and thought of his vulgar remarks just now. He couldn't help but frown. What are you laughing at? I'm laughing at how you've forgotten one thing after discussing for so long. Xue Zhenyang asked curiously, what is it? Ran-er, what did you think of? Although I don't study much, I have some understanding of the Myriad Waves rune and I know how to draw it. Mo Ran smiled. Look, isn't this the right one? As he spoke, he condensed a wisp of red spiritual energy on his fingertips. He leaned against the pillar leisurely and spread it in the air. After a while, an exquisite incantation of the Myriad Waves rune was reflected in the air. It was as beautiful as a firework. Xuemeng said in surprise, You bastard, that's amazing. When did you learn it? Moran smiled. It's in Shizun's book. I thought it was fun, so I wrote it down. As he spoke, he casually tapped the bright red incantation and made it slowly rise into the air, above everyone's heads. The red inscriptions flickered blurrily, overflowing with bits of light. What do you think? Why don't you compare the incantation I drew and see if it's exactly the same as the one on the silk? The disciples of Shizun Peak were the least afraid of the excitement. When they saw Chu Wanning expressionlessly throw the silk on the table, it was obvious that he agreed with Moran's actions. They immediately rushed over and formed a circle to compare. The people from Baitan Manor were still tense at first, but later they couldn't help but be curious. Some of them even had the mentality of nitpicking, so they also gathered around to take a look. After so many people looked at it for a long time, they finally came to a conclusion. The incantation that Moran drew was exactly the same as the one on the silk. It was almost as if they were drawn by the same person. The idiot from before, one of Li Wuxin's disciples, spoke again. He pointed at Moran and turned pale with fright. Good. Good. You confessed without being pressed. Looks like you're the one who killed them. Moran was speechless. Chu Wanning suddenly said lightly, Little brother, how should I address you? You're asking me? The idiot was stunned. He immediately puffed out his chest and said proudly, Wuxin's 13th direct disciple, Zhen Kongming. Moran, PFFFFFT. Chu Wanning, on the other hand, didn't have much of a reaction to * really smart. After all, he also had a nickname, * scared you to death. He only said coldly, when the elders are talking, the younger generation should learn to shut up. Note, Zhen Kongming equals really smart / Xiaosini, scared you to death. This sentence was obviously mocking Li Wuxin's criticism of Moran. When Li Wuxin heard this, his face turned into the color of pig liver. He was very annoyed, but there was nothing he could do. He could only change the topic and say, Grandmaster Chu's disciple is really a young hero. He's very capable. This incantation is actually drawn exactly like a grandmaster. Manner masterly, it's not just me. If you could draw this incantation, you would definitely draw the same incantation as my master. Li Wuxin glared at Moran. What do you mean by that? Moran smiled. Myriad Waves Rune, the strokes are complicated, the strength of the strokes and the color of the ink won't change for a long time. Therefore, no matter who drew it, it will be indistinguishable from the creator. This actually has nothing to do with the handwriting. If there is even the slightest difference in the drawing, this incantation won't take effect. Nonsense. After being pointed out by a junior like this in public, Li Wuxin couldn't help but become angry. His beard flew in all directions. Which incantation in this world would have such crafty requirements? Although this old man has never practiced this incantation, I also know that this is nonsense. You brat, don't spread rumors. He's not spreading rumors. Li Wuxin couldn't hold it in anymore. He said angrily, Chu Wanning, words have no basis. How could you know? How could you know? The characteristics and weaknesses of an incantation are usually best understood by the creator. Do you dare to say that you are the creator of the Myriad Waves rune? Chu Wanning raised his eyes and looked at him expressionlessly. He took another sip of tea and slowly said, Why wouldn't I dare? I'll tell you right now. Li Wuxin. The Myriad Waves rune was created by me. Li Wuxin. End chapter. Dumb Husky and his white cat Shizun. Chapter 92. This venerable one's Shizun revisit Kaidi town. As soon as he said that, everyone was shocked, especially the disciples of the Baitan manor. Their expressions changed greatly as if they had been struck by lightning. In the cultivation world, third-rate cultivators memorized incantations, second-rate cultivators comprehended incantations, and first-rate cultivators modified incantations. However, there was another kind of person who was not related to the first, second, or third-rate cultivators. That kind of person was usually unreachable. They did not need to memorize incantations because they had already comprehended them and were not satisfied with modification. Instead, they had mastered the last step: creation. They were either good at refining unique elixirs, creating peerless armors, or drawing unprecedented spiritual incantations. In all these ways, they were called grandmasters. These very few elite cultivators at top of the summit, these grandmasters were often immortalized in the inscription of a scroll or on a treasure or spiritual weapon. The young disciples of the Baitan manor did not expect that the person they wanted to send to Tianyan Pavilion was such one godlike figure. Li Wuxin's forehead was covered with cold sweat, but as the head of the sect, he had to hold on. He forced a smile, and there was a layer of oil on his waxy face. I didn't expect such a coincidence that the myriad wave rune was created by a grandmaster. Then I'm really... Haha, I've misunderstood greatly. However, when I was fighting with Luo Xiangxian's vengeful spirit in Kaidi town, I got another thing. I don't know if this thing has anything to do with you. Chu Wanning frowned and asked, what is it? Li Wuxin waved his hand, and really smart immediately came over with a brocade box. It's a weapon. Chu Wanning did not speak. He looked at the brocade box for a while and suddenly said, is it a willow vine? This time, not to mention the others, even Mo Ran opened his eyes wide in disbelief. Li Wuxin said in a trembling voice, you, how do you know? Is it really you? No. What's going on? A golden light lit up in Chu Wanning's palm, spreading inch by inch and coiling around the ground. As the light softened, a stretch of willow branches and leaves appeared in front of everyone. Chu Wanning, on the other hand, was unperturbed. He was now convinced that the Kaidi town incident was the same as the Jinchinj Lake incident and the Peach Blossom Spring incident. It was all done by the same person. Therefore, he asked, Manor Masterly, the thing inside the box is this weapon, right? Yes, that's right. Li Wuxin was almost at a loss for words. When the brocade box was opened, there was indeed a bunch of identical vines inside. Chu Wanning narrowed his eyes. When he was in the Peach Blossom Spring, the ghost that killed members of Feathered Tribe and framed Mo Ran made him suspicious. Now, it seemed that he was right. Manor Masterly, can I take a look at this willow vine? Li Wuxin thought about it and secretly realized that the situation today was not good. It was better not to offend Chu Wanning further, so he said, Grandmaster Chu is too polite. I came here to ask about the situation. If you're willing to take a look, I'm more than happy. There's no reason for me to stop you. When young Master Chang heard this, he was unhappy. He had spent a lot of money to ask Baitan Manor to support him. Seeing that the situation was not good, was this old thing going to change sides? He kept glancing at Li Wuxin and glared at him angrily. Li Wuxin was not willing to pay attention to him. However, Mo Ran saw it clearly and joked, Young Master Chang, is there something wrong with your eyes? Why are you squinting? On the other side, Chu Wanning took the willow vine from the brocade box and looked at it carefully. As expected, although the willow vine had the same appearance as Tianwen and Jiangui, its breath was very weak. It was different from the godly weapon that had recognized its master. It was obviously a dead thing. Zaixin Lu. Xuemeng's ears were sharp. When he heard these words, he was stunned. What? This willow branch, as well as the one that killed the Feathered Tribe members in Peach Blossom Spring, were all broken from the Zaixin Lu, Chu Wanning said. Ah! Shimei cried out in surprise. Is that so? Back in Jinchinj Lake, before the old dragon died, he said that a certain spell of the fake Goshen required a strong wood spirit to sustain it. He must have left behind a few pieces of the divine willow before Jinchinj Lake was destroyed. Although the spiritual power of the divine willow weakened after it fell, it could still hold on for a while. Chu Wanning's slender fingers stroked the golden leaves. And he didn't waste this kind of spiritual power that had been depleted. He used it to frame others and gave it to his puppets as weapons. As he spoke, he suddenly lit a fire in his hand and touched the willow vine that was very similar to Tianwen. The flame immediately burned and reflected in the frightened and confused eyes of the crowd. This item isn't my weapon. Chu Wanning extinguished the fire after burning a small part of the branch. He threw the willow vine away and said indifferently, Tianwen's spiritual power is abundant. Not even the samadhi true fire can burn it, let alone a normal fire spell. Li Wuxin opened his mouth and closed it again. After a while, he opened it again unwillingly. I've heard about the peach blossom spring. I heard that young Master Mo of Shisheng Peak killed the feathered tribe's elder immortal by mistake. Sigh, I didn't kill her. Mo Ran waved his hand. Xue Zhenyang was displeased, but his attitude was firm. I've already explained this to the cultivation sects. It wasn't my nephew who did it. Manner masterly, if you mention it like that again, don't blame me for being impolite. When Mo Ran saw him like this, he seemed to have triggered something in his heart. He was suddenly stunned. Something deep seemed to flow through his smiling eyes. He murmured, Uncle. Chu Wanning said, the matter of Peach Blossom Spring was originally a misunderstanding. But at that time, I couldn't defend my disciple. But today, all of you have come to ask for an explanation. I'm willing to tell the whole story to all of you from Baitan Manor. Under the flickering light, Chu Wanning briefly explained the matter of Jinchinj Lake and the Peach Blossom Spring. When he finished, the disciples of Baitan Manor were dumbfounded. Li Wuxin's clothes were soaked in sweat. He stuttered for a while before he said bitterly, Grandmaster Chu, are you saying that there's a person in the world who has almost mastered one of the three great forbidden techniques, the Zhenlong chess formation? That's right. How is that possible? That's a forbidden technique. Even the leader of the Rufeng sect, the #1 sect in the world, can't get the scroll of the forbidden technique. Chu Wanning said, I'm not lying. But whether you believe it or not, it's up to you to decide. That's impossible. Li Wuxin's face was pale. His lips trembled as he laughed, as if he could convince himself as long as he took this as a joke. If there's someone who can really master the Zhenlong chess formation, won't the world be in chaos? Won't everything in the cultivation world be rewritten? As the Emperor Taxian Jun of his previous life, Mo Ran was a bit unhappy. That person only knows how to play it, but he is not proficient in it. If he had really mastered it, would the world be so peaceful now? Li Wuxin's long beard trembled. He was about to say something when a sword light suddenly flashed at the door. A Baitan Manor disciple covered in blood rolled down from the sword and vomited a mouthful of blood. Then he raised his tear-stained face and shouted at Li Wuxin, Manor Lord, it's bad, it's bad. The barrier you set up above Kaidi town has been broken. When the ferocious spirits rushed out, the senior martial brothers used their flesh and blood to create a barrier, temporarily preventing the ferocious spirits in the town from escaping. But, the 30 senior martial brothers of Baitan Manor who were guarding the barrier have all died. He gasped for breath, then suddenly howled. Manor Lord. Quickly report this to all the cultivation sects in the upper cultivation world. All the dead people in that town are being controlled. It's a forbidden technique, a forbidden technique. What? Li Wuxin staggered back and bumped into a pillar. His whole body was as pale and haggard as a corpse that had just fallen out of a coffin. We won't be able to hold on by ourselves. The disciple's face was stained with blood and snot. Manor Lord. He suddenly saw Xue Zhenyang and repeatedly kowtowed to him. Sect leader Xue, I beg you to come with us. My senior martial brothers. I'm sorry. He mumbled incoherently for a while, then suddenly closed his eyes and looked up at the sky in grief. They're all dead. There was a moment of dead silence in the main hall, then an uproar ensued. Xue Zhenyang didn't panic in the face of danger. He immediately ordered Madame Wang to notify the rest of the 8 major cultivation sects in the upper cultivation world and ordered Xue Meng to gather all the elders. Chu Wanning. There's no time to delay. I'll go first. But you don't know the sword flight technique. Before Chu Wanning could answer, Mo Ran rushed over. He really wanted to meet the person who mastered the Zhenlong chess formation. Uncle, don't worry. I'll do the sword flight technique and fly on the sword with Shizun. Chu Wanning glanced at him, but didn't say anything. It was a tacit agreement. The two of them walked out of the hall together. Shi Mei stood in place for a while with a pale face. Suddenly, he regained his senses and said, I also. But when they ran out of the loyalty hall, Chu Wanning and the others were already far away on their swords. Coincidentally, Xue Zhenyang told him to come back and not to run around by himself. Shi Mei had no choice but to turn back and look for Xue Meng, waiting for Xue Meng and the others to leave with the second group. Li Wuxin had lived like a prince for a long time in Baitan Manor. He had never encountered such a big event. But the old man still wanted to save face. He took a deep breath and immediately ordered people to take care of the disciple who delivered the message. He also sent a message to the rest of the elders of his sect, telling them to also gather troops and prepare to go to Kaidi town again to restore their dignity. A group of people walked out Shisheng Peak in a grandiose manner. Like hundreds of shooting stars, they flew from Shisheng Peak to Kaidi town. Li Wuxin stood at the head of his sword and walked among the clouds. He couldn't help but secretly size up the disciples of the number 1 sect in the lower cultivation world with the corner of his eyes. He never expected that there would be a day when he would be leading his troops into battle. Unexpectedly, he would be on the same side as this motley crew that he looked down on the most. For a moment, his mood was a bit complicated. However, the sword traveled 1,000 miles in the blink of an eye. The clouds in front of him split open and a beam of blood-red evil light soared into the sky. Li Wuxin was no longer in the mood to care about the difference between the upper and lower worlds of cultivators in the sky. A red light formation as big as the entire Kaidi town was constantly flashing. The huge formation was divided into a neat checkerboard grid by the beam of light. On the checkerboard, the shadows of the dead townspeople were floating in the air like wooden and clay sculptures. There were 500 families and over 1,000 residents. Looking at it, it looked like a lush jungle of human flesh. Li Wuxin cried out involuntarily, This is really, the Zhenlong chess formation. Xue Zhenjiang's complexion was also extremely unsightly. He said to Li Wuxin, Manor Master Li, I'll take my people to the southeast. I'll have to trouble you to go to the northwest. The people from the other 8 sects haven't arrived yet. Kaidi town will have to rely on us to hold on for a while. Li Wuxin really didn't have the mood to care about the us. He nodded and said, all right. Xue Zhenyang cupped his fists towards him, and then descended with his sword, leading the others to descend from the sky, one after another landing in the southeast part of Kaidi town. The protective barrier formed by the disciples of Baitan Manor using their flesh and blood was already on the verge of collapse and its aura was extremely weak. Through the translucent barrier, one could see the rioting group of corpses inside. Chu Wanning. Seeing a man in white fluttering clothes and a young man in blue and silver light armor standing in front of him, Xue Zhenyang shouted, What's wrong? Can't this barrier be repaired? Chu Wanning had been here for a long time. The world's number 1 barrier master was here, but this barrier was still in a damaged state. Xue Zhenyang was very confused. Unexpectedly, Chu Wanning ignored him. Just as Xue Zhenyang was about to call again, Mo Ran suddenly turned around and gestured at him. SHH, uncle, don't make a sound. Come here. Xue Zhenyang walked over and asked, What do you mean? Don't disturb him. Mo Ran pointed at Chu Wanning. Although he was standing, his eyes were closed. His lips were pale, without a trace of blood on them. Xue Zhenyang was shocked. He used his finger to touch the side of his neck and said in horror, "Soul separation technique. Yes, there are ghosts inside, thousands of them, but I can't see Luo Xianxian. She should be in the innermost part. The matter hasn't been investigated yet. He doesn't know what the person behind this is going to do this time, so he wants to find Luo Xianxian and ask her himself. They're all ghosts, what's the point of asking?" Xue Zhenyang slapped his thigh in anger. "It's more important to strengthen the barrier." "Absolutely not," Mo Ran said sternly. Shizun used the soul separation technique to temporarily separate his soul and enter the barrier because it's full of dead people. This way, he won't alert the enemy. If we strengthen the barrier now, it will kill Shizun. "What?" Xue Zhenyang hurriedly said, "Nephew, you stay here and guard him. I'll go talk to Li Wuxin." Mo Ran nodded and said, "Once Shizun's soul returns, I'll immediately use the blue spell to light it up in the air. At that time, I'll seal the east, south, west and north together. Until I sent that signal, uncle, you must not let them repair the barrier. Otherwise, thousands of ghosts will devour Shizun's soul and he won't be able to protect himself." I know. Before Xue Zhenyang finished speaking, he had already dashed out. Mo Ran raised his eyes and looked at the barrier that was about to collapse. "It's about time, Shizun. You should have found Luo Xianxian by now." He turned his face and held Chu Wanning's cold hand naturally out of worry. However, he didn't notice it at all. He stared at Chu Wanning and said softly, "Soon." At this time, Shi Mei, Xue Meng, and the others landed and stood in the crowd. Unexpectedly, as soon as they raised their heads, they saw the two people in front of the barrier with their hands clasped together. Shi Mei was stunned at first, then his face turned pale. He bit his lips and slowly turned his head away. End chapter. Dumb Husky and his white cat Shizun. Chapter 93. This venerable one's Shizun, who dares to touch him? Chu Wanning's soul was walking through the bounded domain at this time. Everywhere he passed, there were ghosts and demons roaming about. But what was strange was that the bodies were all badly mutilated. Every one of them had their hearts dug out before they died. Their chests were empty, and there were blood vessels and flesh hanging outside. Some of them even had their white ribs showing. Chu Wanning knew that something was wrong, but the defensive barrier hanging around Kaidi town was getting weaker and weaker. He couldn't stay for long, so he quickly rushed to the Chen family's residence. When he arrived at the Chen family's residence, he saw that there were 4 cauldrons in each of the 4 directions, north, south, east and west. Each of the 4 cauldrons was emitting thicker and thicker smoke. But the smoke was not pure white, but red, blue, brown and gold. There was fire under the cauldrons, which was filled with blood. When he looked closer, he found that under the boiling blood, there were piles of red meat. It's human hearts. Each of the 4 cauldrons was full. They were the hearts of the dead people in the town. Sand makes a tower. Chu Wanning murmured. He suddenly understood why he and Mo Ran had not seen the mysterious person who was supposedly looking for strong spiritual essence in spite of searching for many days. That insane individual could actually do this kind of thing. The so-called accumulation of sand to form a tower was to dig out hearts of the same essence and pile hundreds of them together. Although they were not as powerful as the spiritual essence of a full-fledged cultivator, due to the soaring resentment of the people who died in vain, they could still stimulate a significant amount of power for a short period of time. But why did it have to be Kaidi town? Why did it have to be Luo Xianxian? Stepping into the Chen family's courtyard, he saw that Chen Yuanwei and Madame Chen had both hanged themselves on the beam in the hall. Their hearts were also dug out, but they didn't die like the townsfolk outside. They were torn into pieces from the waist down by a strong force. Their legs and feet couldn't be seen. Looking around the hall, he didn't see Luo Xianxian. Then he entered the ancestral hall and saw a bowl of meat paste in front of the ancestral tablets of the Chen family. Looking carefully, there were half an eyeball and a finger mixed in the meat paste. Chu Wanning was disgusted and was about to leave when he suddenly heard a burst of clear laughter coming from above his head. Suddenly, he raised his eyes. The white paper lanterns fluttered in the air, and the extinguished candles lit up one after another. Luo Xianxian was sitting on the beam. Her feet were as white as jade, and she was wearing a red wedding dress. She was swaying and looking at Chu Wanning with her head tilted. "Oh, you found me." She smiled charmingly. Although she looked like the one in Chu Wanning's memory, she was completely different from the shy and bashful soul that Chu Wanning had seen back then. She was arrogant and blazing like a flame. Her eyes were still round, but they flashed with a demonic bloody light. Luo Xianxian was demonized. Tianwen only had one chance to interrogate Ghost. Before, when Chu Wanning came to Kaidi town for the exorcism mission, he had already used Tianwen to interrogate her, so he couldn't use this method a second time. The only way now was to suppress the demonic nature in her soul first, then call her back to her true self before interrogating her. Chu Wanning said, "Luo Xianxian, why are you doing this?" In his sleeves, he had secretly formed a spell and was ready to launch it. "Het," the petite girl said crisply, "'cause it makes me happy." "It's none of your business." Chu Wanning shook his head and frowned deeper. There was a mark between the center of his eyebrows, as if it was carved. "Is the one in the bowl Chen Bohuan's youngest brother?" "Oh, you mean him?" Luo Xianxian said carelessly, "The one in the left column is him. The one in the right column was the chopped-up little bitch surnamed Yao. Who did she think she is? She could have like anyone else, but just because she was the county magistrate's daughter, she wanted to steal my husband. She deserved to be chopped into pieces." Luo Xianxian had completely lost her mind at this time. Her temperament was completely different from when she was alive. She couldn't recognize that the person in front of her was the one she addressed as Lord Yama and whom she asked to avenge her. When Chu Wanning heard this, he feared that the youngest Chen daughter might also be dismembered, and his heart got even colder. He asked in a low voice, "Then, the little sister of the Chen family? She treated me well, so I didn't treat her badly." Luo Xianxian said and smiled. Her lips were delicate and beautiful, as if they had just been stained with blood. She rubbed her belly and said with a bright smile, "That's why she's here. I ate her up. Then my little sister won't be bullied when she's with me." "You've gone insane." Before he finished speaking, flame and lightning appeared in his hand. The golden light suddenly lit up the whole room. Chu Wanning leaped into the air and slapped a spell on Luo Xianxian's forehead as she screamed. The ghost howled violently. Speed was the most important thing in war. Chu Wanning was swift and fierce. He drew out 10 shining chains in the blink of an eye and bound Luo Xianxian. He pointed at her eyebrows with his slender fingertips. His eyes were shining like blazing lightning. His face was gloomy and cold, like thunder clouds. His thin lips moved slightly and he started to chant the spell. Luo Xianxian's eyes bulged and saliva dripped from her mouth. Her beautiful face became ferocious as she chanted, "Shut up! Let me go! I want blood as compensation." "What's wrong with that?" Chu Wanning ignored her. He looked down and the light on his fingertips became brighter. "Ah!" Luo Xianxian screamed hysterically. "Let me go! Let me go! My head hurts! I can't take it anymore!" She screamed miserably and suddenly stopped. Her eyes were full of blood and the corners of her mouth were slightly curved. 2 strange chuckles rang out. "You want me to scream like that, right, esteemed cultivator?" Chu Wanning's phoenix-like eyes suddenly widened. Almost as soon as he withdrew his hand, his long body flew a few feet away. The white shadow was so fast but he barely avoided Luo Xiangxian's soul-breaking palm. He floated under the veranda, white silk fluttering in the wind. Luo Xianxian straightened her body slowly. The pain she pretended to be in disappeared. She was not affected by Chu Wanning's purification spell at all. Instead, her spiritual power seemed to be stronger than before. You want to hurt me with a mere purification spell? Luo Xianxian sneered. I've absorbed the qi of thousands of living people in this town. I only need one last night to refine my mortal body. Afterwards, I can save Chen Bohuan from the netherworld. We can live together and stay away from the world of mortals. How can I fail at the last minute and be ruined by you, cultivator? Her true nature was gone. The only thing in her heart is the obsession to never be separated from Chen Bohuan. Chu Wanning thought of something and asked in a low voice, who told you that you can refine your mortal body this way? What does it have to do with you? Chu Wanning said coldly, that person is full of nonsense. Your original body has been destroyed. If you want to refine your mortal body, you have to enter the reincarnation cycle again. How can you be reborn by absorbing the qi of thousands of living people? He lied to you in order to slaughter everyone in the town just to get their hearts and souls so that he could gather spiritual power and do what he wanted to do. Luo Xianxian suddenly opened her eyes wide. Impossible. He wouldn't lie to me. Who is he? He is. After a while, Luo Xianxian screamed and held her head. I don't know. I don't know. I want my mortal body. I want to live. I don't want to die. He didn't lie to me. He didn't lie to me. You lied to me. Yes, it's you. The red silk was biting cold. The female ghost stretched out her sharp claws and attacked Chu Wanning. At the same time, an ominous thunder suddenly came from the sky. Chu Wanning dodged Luo Xiangxian's attack and looked up. He saw that the defense barrier had been torn apart by the murderous aura at Kaidi Town. The qi of the living people outside rushed in and living death roared in all directions. The barrier was about to break. It was too late. If he couldn't call back Luo Xiangxian's spiritual mind, he could only choose to kill her here. Then all the clues would be gone. Outside the defense barrier, Li Wuxin looked at the horrible crack in the sky and shouted at Xue Zhenyang, "Don't you want to fix it? Fix it? If the barrier is broken, thousands of corpses will swarm out. Can you and I stop them?" Wait. Xue Zhenjiang's facial expression was not good and beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. Don't fix it? Yu Heng is still inside. Wait. Li Wuxin cursed in his heart. Seeing the crack in the barrier, his heart was beating fast. He said angrily, if the barrier is broken later, there will be a fierce fight. I'll see how you explain it to the whole world of cultivation. After that, he turned to the disciple and asked loudly, have you sent the signal? When will the other 8 sects arrive? The disciple in charge of sending the message was so anxious that his forehead was full of sweat. The 8 sects all said that this is an important matter and they need to report it to their leaders first. After the leaders and elders discuss and decide, they can come to quell the chaos. Li Wuxin's face immediately turned as black as the bottom of a pot. What about the Rufeng sect? Sect leader Nangong has always been bold and daring. How can they be so feeble now? The disciple didn't know how to answer, but suddenly, he saw the sound transmission talisman flare. After reading it, he was overjoyed and said repeatedly, the Rufeng sect is here. The Rufeng sect just sent a message saying that they will immediately send disciples to suppress the evil. Sure enough, in less than the time it took to drink a cup of tea, a layer of blue cloud suddenly rolled over from the horizon. When it got closer, it was no longer a cloud, but a black mass of over 1,000 people. Each of them was under the command of a blue crane, and they were in an orderly formation. The 2 people in the lead were Nangong Si and Ye Wangzi. Nangong Si was riding on his Fei Wolf Nao Beijin. He had a jade bow in his arm and a quiver of arrows on his back. He looked majestic and the arrogance of a young man was written all over his face. Ye Wangzi was still dressed in black and wrapped in a shawl embroidered with the totem of the Rufeng sect's red-crowned crane. He looked 70% handsome and 30% beautiful. What's going on? As soon as Nangongsi saw the tattered defensive barrier, he exploded. He glanced around the crowd with sparks in his eyes. He directly skipped over the group of people from Shisheng Peak of the lower cultivation world. His gaze fell on the only person who was still qualified to talk to him, the Baitan Manor Master. Li Wuxin. The barrier is already broken this much, yet you're just standing there like idiots. Don't you know how to fix it? Although Li Wuxin was much older than Nangongsi, he was the only son of the sect master of the world's #1 sect. He was actually scolded until his face turned red, but he still forced himself to smile. Young Master Nangong, you don't know. It was Sect Master Xue's idea not to fix the barrier. In a word, he threw the blame to Xue Zhenyang. Shi Shengpeak. Nangongsi glanced at Xue Zhenyang and snorted. It was unknown whether he was sneering or had other intentions. Then, he waved his hand and said to his personal attendant, "Go fix this damn broken pot." I thought it was a big deal. Ye Wangzi wanted to stop him. Young master. Nangongsi didn't even look at him. What was even stranger was that Song Kaiyutong also came. However, she wasn't standing next to Ye Wangzi today. Instead, she stood next to Nangongsi. Her face was still covered by a white veil, and her eyes were lowered. She looked extremely obedient. The disciples of the Rufeng sect didn't hesitate in their actions. They only listened to the orders of their young master. This was especially true for Nangongsi's personal attendants, who was raised by that wild horse. The group didn't listen to any dissuasion or explanation. They all stepped forward and began to form hand seals. Stop. Xue Zhenyang had just interrupted 4 or 5 people's moves. When he turned around, he saw that another disciple had already formed a repair hand seal. A ray of blue light shot towards the crack in the barrier. Xue Zhenjiang's expression suddenly changed. He shouted, "Yu Heng!" Bang! Sparks flew in all directions. At this critical moment, a blood-red bolt of lightning suddenly struck down. It forcibly intercepted the repair hand seal in front of the crack. Everyone looked up and saw a young man holding a willow vine and standing in the air. He was currently guarding the barrier. The young man's face was originally very bright and amiable, as if he was born with warmth. However, at this moment, his gaze was sharp and his eyes were like torches. The willow vine in his hand was overflowing with blood-red light. Every leaf was sputtering with flames. Mo Ran's eyebrows were extremely scrunched. In the air, he coldly said, "I fucking said that no one is allowed to touch this barrier. Are you newcomers deaf? Don't you understand human language?" Although he loathed Chu Wanning, that was still a personal grudge between the two of them. Whether it was in the past or present, except for himself, if anyone dared to touch a single hair on Chu Wanning's head, Mo Ran would want to take that person's dog life. He had said that only he could kill, destroy, and bully the people he hated. In his rage, he couldn't help but reveal some of the ruthlessness from his previous life. His entire aura was no longer that of the usual playful gigolo. Never mind the people of the Rufeng sect, even Xue Zhenyang, Xue Meng, and even Shi Mei were stunned when they saw Mo Ran like this. End chapter.